Governor Hochul, first question. The U.S. Court of International Trade said President Trump exceeded his authority to implement tariffs on his own. Your reaction?
They were absolutely correct. He exceeded the authority. It's up to Congress to engage in the tariff negotiations, and he just ignored that. And I will say this, as I've been saying since day one, these tariffs are nothing but a tax on everything you purchase. And as a border state with Canada that shares 450 miles with them, this was already having an impact on our farmers and others who rely on that cross-border trade. So that's a good outcome. I only hope the Supreme Court will also follow the rules and make sure that this is a permanent decision.
The president's lawyers argue this is an economic emergency, and you are trying to block him solving an economic emergency.
Well, that's not true. The economic emergency is created when everyone's watching their 401k plans disappear overnight as they watch the stock market respond to these tariffs just a few months ago. You know, we're on this roller coaster right now, and businesses in my own state and across the country are in a state of limbo. They don't know if they should be continuing to put in orders for the holiday season. They don't know whether or not they're going to have increased costs that make them have to think about their own supply chain. So what I know about businesses, and we have many successful businesses here in the state of New York, we're a pro-business state, is that businesses want certainty. And this is anything but. So the economic emergency was created by Donald Trump and his administration.
I want to talk to you about immigration raids. There have been raids in courthouses in 4 states, including New York. ICE agents, some in masks, waiting to arrest asylum seekers after their hearings. The records often suggest those being targeted do not have criminal records. Do you regard this as moral, legal, ethical?
No, this is complete the opposite of what President Trump promised to run when he ran and what he told me in many conversations, that they're going after the worst of the worst, the people who've committed crimes in their own countries, people that are committing crimes in our state and harming others. I mean, I'll work with ICE, and I've said this hundreds of times, that those are the people I also want out of my state. But those who are following the rules, going down to immigration court to have their required meeting on their path to asylum, they're just sitting ducks now. And to have ICE distracted from getting the real criminals off our streets, which is what we support, and focusing on people who are law-abiding or have been here for years and years and have built up a family and a business, I'll tell you what, I have 400,000 open jobs in the state of New York right now. I want people who want to come here to work, file the papers to be here legally, and embrace them and let them start paying taxes and being part of our family and our economy. And what's happening with these raids, and I'm not just talking about in courthouses, we had a horrific raid where ICE members showed up at a farm at 6 a.m. in Tom Homan's hometown of Sackett's Harbor in upstate New York. You know who they took? Not criminals. They took away a 3rd grader, her mother, and her teenage twin brothers. They just scooped them up. Dad wasn't home at 6 a.m. Why? Because he was out on the farm milking the cows that early in the morning. They took him to a detention center in Louisiana for 11 days. I raised hell about that because this is exactly the opposite of what we are told. The law-abiding individuals will be left alone, continue their jobs. We need them, and to go after the criminals. So, no, this is wrong on many levels, and we have to stand up and call it out for what it is.
Do you agree with Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who described ICE as a, quote, rogue agency that should not exist?
No, we need to protect our borders. I don't support open borders. And what we're trying to manage in the state of New York is this influx of 220,000 people who came in the most recent wave over the last couple of years. And we want to have some control on our borders. But for those who are already here that want to work, that's a different story. But ICE is necessary on the border to help also get rid of the criminals. And also, I'll say one more area where ICE has not been that helpful. When people commit crimes in our state, they go through the legal process, they're convicted, they spend time in prison. We alert ICE at the end of their term, their sentence, and tell them to take them out of the country. And they're not even doing that. They're too focused on people who are trying to follow the laws. And that's frustrating for us here in the state of New York.
Governor, according to the statistics I was just reviewing this morning, 7 million New Yorkers are enrolled in Medicaid. About 30% are children, and 71% of Medicaid recipients in your state work full or part-time. What effect would planned Medicaid changes being debated in Washington right now have on your state, your Medicaid recipients, and your ability to budget for the future?
One word: devastating. Absolutely devastating. This is a safety net program to help people who are struggling. And we've always, in the state of New York and in this country, have realized our responsibilities as those who need a hand up, and to take care of our little kids and senior citizens in nursing homes. The vast majority of people in our state on Medicaid, most of the expenses in nursing homes. And what is supposed to happen to them? Are they coming back home? Are you going to take care of them? Republicans in Congress who support this. So they're at odds with the interests of their own districts, the people who elected them and sent them to Washington, and they need to be held accountable for this. This is untenable, and it is something that I hope that someone in Washington and the majority of the Republicans will come to their senses and say, why are we hurting our own constituents?
We'll talk to you about New York City for a moment, a city that thrives on tourism, quite understandably. And it depends on New Yorkers also their sense of public safety. And I must tell you, Governor, in ways that I have not heard since the late 1980s, when I talk to friends who live in New York, they have an anxiety about crime, either in the subways or on the streets. That lurking anxiety now bothers them in ways that they don't remember for years and years and years. How much of that falls on your doorstep?
What I'll say is that perception is real. I acknowledge that, and fear can be debilitating. And as a mom myself, the first mom governor, I know protecting people's families is my number one priority. So I speak often about public safety. And I've invested over $1 billion since I've been governor to keep our streets safe. Gun violence is down to historic lows. Subway crimes are down to a 27-year low. But me talking about statistics, I can't change the human emotion of fear that exists. But what I have done is take tangible steps to protect people in our communities. For example, the subways, the lifeline of our city, get so many people to their jobs even late at night, people working in uniforms going into hospitals or to be a night watch person. They deserve to be safe on our subways, which is why I, as the state, for the first time in history, have allocated funds to pay for New York City police. Now, this is a local issue, but I'm helping fund NYPD, so there's 2 police officers on every single overnight train. So those individuals feel more secure. I've also put upwards of 1,000 National Guard members in our subways to help people get that sense of security. I'm hearing a lot more positive outcomes from that, but we have a ways to go. I can't change perception overnight. It is real, I acknowledge it, but I can use my powers to do what I can to help local municipalities like the city of New York and their efforts to stop crime.
Let me ask you another New York City question. You have, I think it's fair to say, a complex relationship with Andrew Cuomo. He's the leading candidate to become the city mayor of New York. I don't know a lot about New York politics, but I know it's always an interesting relationship between the governor and any mayor of New York City. So there are a lot of layers of complexity here. Walk me through them.
Well, historically, there is always a tension between the governor and the mayor. That goes back for decades. When I became governor, I said I'm going to change that dynamic. We don't have to have an era of hostility and one-upsmanship. I also represent, as governor, the 8.3 million people who call New York City home. They're also my constituents. So why would I take steps to harm them or their duly elected leaders just to make my own ego feel like I'm in charge? I don't have to go there. What I've done is develop a relationship. I work with Bill de Blasio. I work closely with Eric Adams. I bring resources to the city. The mayor of the city of New York asked for $1 billion to help build affordable housing. I didn't put him through contortions to get that money. I said yes. So I've reframed the narrative. I look forward to continuing with that with whomever the voters of this great city decide they want as their mayor. Doesn't matter who it is. My responsibility as governor is to work, put a hand out in cooperation, and we'll see what happens.
Couple of questions. You worked hard for the legislature to provide inflation refund checks. Couple of questions. Will your name be on those checks? And do you have any fear they'll fuel inflation like the COVID relief checks might have?
My name will not be on the checks, but what we've done is tried to address a situation, the opposite of what Washington is doing with their tariffs, and they're cutting programming and hurting our New York family. I've done the opposite in terms of trying to put more money back in people's pockets. The inflation rebate is part of that strategy. Overall, it's $5,000 back in families' pockets with a middle-class tax cut, the largest rate cut we've seen in 70 years. But the inflation rebate comes from one source. We saw last fall our collections and sales tax were up $3 billion. Why? Because New Yorkers paid more for everything because of inflation. Price of a product goes up, the sales tax goes up. What I said was, this doesn't belong to us. It belongs to New Yorkers. Let's put it back in families' pockets, the ones who are struggling, trying to pay for groceries and childcare and utility bills. I lived that life. That was my experience in my own parents' life, who started living in a trailer park, and we really struggled. We buy our clothes at used clothing stores, and my mom tried so hard to stretch the food to feed a family of 8. And even when I started out and had to leave a job I loved in Washington, working for Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, I loved that position, but I couldn't afford childcare myself. We lost my income, and I was the mom clutching coupons, going into the big box stores, buying the bulk size paper towels and diapers. So when people are struggling now, I take it personally. I can connect with them, and I want them to know we hear them. I'm not just going to tweet about it. I'm not going to hold a rally. I'm not going to just, use all those other platforms that people have available to them. That's great, but I'm the governor. I can do something about it. And I fought hard to be able to put money back in people's pockets, and they're really grateful.
I'm not a cynic by nature, Governor, but I read people who are, and there are some cynics who say the inflation refund checks are a way to soften congestion pricing increases.
I don't see the connection at all. They're actually independent. Most people in the state of New York aren't even within the realm, the geographic area that's affected by congestion pricing. And congestion pricing is working. I was able to reduce the initial cost 40%. It was supposed to be $12 for people to go into the congestion zone. I got it down to $9, reduced it dramatically. But also, that is funding the lifeline of our city, which is public transportation. 90% of the people who work in the central business district, the area identified in Manhattan as being in the congestion, the tolling area, they take public transit. They take our buses and our subways and our trains. And I have to find the money to overcome decades of disinvestment. So that is a highly functioning, clean, efficient, safe operation. So the congestion pricing money helps fund that. But also, New York is a different place right now. Our streets are not as congested. And people that were very fearful of congestion pricing, like people on Broadway, all the producers, they just had their best year ever. Retail sales, people were terrified people would not come into the city of New York. They're coming in droves. Our streets are packed. People are spending money. And the good news is that everybody from Uber drivers to taxi drivers, they're getting around faster because there's less traffic. So I encourage other cities to look at this. It has worked. And the inflation rebate is for people in every corner of the state, from North Country to Long Island to Buffalo to the southern tier. So it has no connection at all to congestion pricing.
You're in a rather intense legal war with the Trump administration over congestion pricing. Where does that stand, and how would you describe your relationship with President Trump on this and so many other issues?
On congestion pricing, we just keep winning. We had another victory in court, literally a temporary restraining order to get the administration to stop threatening me. Every month I get a letter, a hostage letter, it seems. They're saying we're going to take your funding for different programs if you don't stop it. The truth is, this is a local decision made by a state and its localities that we want to manage our traffic in a certain way. And it is not the purview of the federal government. We secured all the necessary approvals in the past, so that's not up for dispute. And the judges just keep agreeing with us. So I encourage the Secretary of Transportation, who seems very, very obsessed about this program, focus on the skies. You're responsible for safety in our skies with airplanes and air traffic controllers. I'll do my job. You do yours, and we'll be far better off. My relationship with the president, obviously complex, but I have said to him, and we've rolled up our sleeves and worked together in areas where we have a common interest, and I'm grateful for that access. And using that to say, let's work on Penn Station together. This should be a beautiful monument to all that is great about New York City, not the current hellhole that it is right now. So he wants to help me with that. He understands my arguments on congestion pricing. I don't necessarily think he agrees, but he understands this is the prerogative of the local government and the state. And we'll see how it goes. He knows I'll challenge on issues I disagree, like tariffs, like the Medicaid cuts and other areas. But I think we're far better off when you have a working relationship, because there's a lot of ways that we rely on the federal government, and having them not in a position of hostility with respect to everything we do makes us far better off.
Governor, you're running for re-election next year. I want to read you a quote from Elise Stefanik, who is a member of Congress who's all but announced to challenge you. Quote, "The fact is that Kathy Hochul is not only the worst governor in America, she is also the biggest drag on the ballot in the state of New York." Your response?
Check the source. I will not accept
What do you
that
mean by
kind of
that?
criticism from a Republican. She's wrong. She's wrong. I mean, I would welcome a race like that. Let me tell you, I've run in 16 elections. I'm very competitive. I will win this election. And as happened last time I ran, when two members of Congress thought they could take me out in a primary and a general, guess what? They became former members of Congress. So when they're counting their numbers and seats they're going to lose, if the Republicans want to lose another seat there, because I can win that with a Democrat, that's fine. That's fine. And having the baggage of not fully repealing the state and local tax, which was a promise, hurting people by taking Medicare away and the SNAP program and education programs, there is so much ammunition. I say bring it on.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul, it's been a pleasure. Governor, you're always welcome here at the Conversation Corner on the Takeout. Thanks for the time.
All right, thank you.